Hey, we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a Sip of Stardust. Hi, Heather. I'm just going to go ahead and read this intro really quick, and then we'll hop into it. Welcome, witches, mystics, and cosmic souls, to a Sip of Stardust. I'm your host, Allie, the Cosmic Space Witch, a professional astrologer with an esoteric twist. My specialty is galactic astrology, where I dive deep to explore the macrocosm of the sky and the microcosm of your soul. I look way past the typical forecast, incorporating asteroids, black holes, fixed stars, and the ancient mysteries, to give you an expanded and truly esoteric lens with which to view the grand design. Here, we'll sip on tea and we'll explore the astrology. Catch new episodes live on Substack at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the nights of the new and full moon, with recordings available the next day on all streaming platforms. We'll welcome magical guests. Hi, Heather. Drink handcrafted tea, pull oracle cards, and decode the myth, magic, and mystery found in the stars and in you. Each guest and conversation will revolve loosely around the archetypal dynamics of the zodiac sign of that moon, or like the current astrology. We're going to talk a lot about the Saturn Neptune conjunction tonight. These conversations, however, will be timeless and be able to be consumed at any point in the year. Tonight, for the Aquarius eclipse, the first eclipse in the Aquarius Leo eclipse story, we'll be chatting with astrologer Heather Elade. Am I saying that right?
Eland.
Okay. This is her bio. It says, "Hi, I'm Heather, professional astrologer, educator, and creator of the Cosmic Academy of Astrology, the Cosmic Wellness Academy." Is that the medical astrology?
Yeah.
Fun fact, I didn't come into astrology through mysticism alone. This is why I love you, because I have a similar background. She says, my background is in clinical astrology.
Psychology.
And she holds a master's degree, which deeply shapes how she thinks about people, patterns, and responsibility. Astrology became the place where psychology, nature, timing, healing, and meaning converged, grounding deep insight in real-world application. Today, she teaches modern Western astrology blended with traditional Hellenistic techniques, always anchored in lived experience and real-life charts. She's also deeply drawn to medical astrology, shaped by a decade-long journey of healing from chronic illness and studies in herbalism, mind-body therapies, and holistic health. Outside of astrology, she lives in the mountains of Colorado with her husband and a lively and adorable crew of rescue animals. So many, and it keeps growing. Spending her days close to the land and the seasons and the natural rhythms that astrology has always been rooted in. Tonight, we will be discussing the Neptune-Saturn conjunction and this new Aquarius-Leo eclipse story, looking at the nodes, previous historic transits over Pluto. I did a little research, and what that brought to light for us. I also found a pretty interesting pattern that I'm excited to kind of share. We will chat about the powerful 2026 astrology and what's to come in the years to follow. So grab a cup and join us in a sip of Stardust.
Yeah.
Hi, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I am very excited. I'm so glad you're over here on Substack. Everybody's venturing over here, and now all my people are here, and I'm very excited. I love this app.
Yeah, it's a lot. I would say it's better than being on Instagram. I'm not a fan of the scrolling parts. So there's like the notes, and there's a lot of scrolling on this one too. I'm trying to get away from scrolling. I think everybody needs to scroll less and just be present more. I mean, scrolling, it kind of puts you into a trance, and it's so bad for your brain, your nervous system, your attention span. For children, it's so bad for the development. And I just realized I was spending so much time like on that app. And every time I go on there to post something or check on something I posted, all of a sudden I'm scrolling all over the place. And it's been, like 30 minutes. And I'm like, what the heck did I just do? So yeah, I'm happy to be in a place where people are posting more thoughtful, in-depth, like long form content where conversations are happening. And yeah, I'm excited to be here with you.
I'm very excited. You're one of my favorite astrologers. I knew I had to have you on this podcast. And yeah, the Neptune Saturn conjunction seemed perfect. Yeah, so before we hop into all the astrology, I know we got your bio, but maybe tell us a little bit about you, what kind of maybe brought you to astrology, and then we can get into all the fun stuff. Not that that's not fun. That'll be fun. Tell me about you.
We'll do the boring stuff first. So, so I first discovered astrology when I was in graduate school for clinical psychology. I was going through a period where, and I haven't talked about a lot of, there are certain things I haven't talked about a lot publicly, but I was going through a period where there was kind of an opening of understanding where I realized through some direct experiences that I was having that this tangible 3D reality, like meat suit situation, is not all that there is, when I really thought that that was all that there is. I wasn't necessarily atheist, but I was kind of like agnostic, like I don't really know if there's anything, very science-based, science-minded. And I thought astrology and all the other woo was just complete nonsense. But then I moved into a very haunted apartment in Chicago where I had an actual poltergeist. And I couldn't deny what was happening because I would be alone in the apartment and there would be banging on my door. Things would fly across the room. I am not, delusional or crazy or anything like that. And one time, my husband, before we actually got together when we were first dating, he was there when a diploma came off my wall and went into the center of my bedroom on its own. Like, how? I don't know. So, that was the first experience where I was like, "Okay, something's going on here," and it happened to coincide with a period where everything was just going wrong, like, financially, with all of my relationships until I, met my husband, all of my friendships. I was, like, drinking a lot and just making a mess of my health, that was already a mess. Like, my health was such a mess at that time, and I just felt really stuck. I didn't like what I was doing. I was doing all these things that I thought that I wanted to do. I was working as a research coordinator at the University of Chicago at a really cool lab, really cool research, and I was so miserable. I was on track to do everything I wanted, and I was miserable. So, something had to change. And I went to visit a friend who I hadn't talked to in a few weeks, and she described to me a series of transits that would have affected me in the exact way of everything that I had experienced the last couple of weeks. I had a particularly rough time right before I came there. And I was like, okay, how? Like, you have to tell me how you did that. So she recommended a book. I took the book home, started looking through all of my chart placements, and I was obsessed ever since then because it was just so accurate. Like, there's no way. There's no way that this isn't something. So, yeah, that was my journey into astrology. I had a really, really weird time for about a year living in that apartment and just kind of my paradigm shattering in so many different ways.
Wow. Our stories are so similar. I'm kind
Do you
of
have a
tripping.
poltergeist too?
Everything but the ghost. No, I can't say that I had a poltergeist, but I also believed, like, my only reference that I had for astrology was the horoscopes in the back of magazines. And I would read those. And what are your big three? I know you have Virgo and Scorpio placements.
Yes, Virgo sun, Scorpio rising, Cancer moon.
Cancer moon. Okay, yeah. I have a Virgo rising. And I feel like Virgos can be a little literal, right? And I just and we're also like skeptics, but Scorpio too. Like, Scorpio will believe the woo if they see the woo, but they're
Mhm.
also like natural born skeptics. Skeptics. My Mercury's in Scorpio. And so I would read those things in the back of magazines and I'd be like, this is so vague and kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And so that's what I thought astrology was. And I too was like very scientific minded. I wasn't atheist. I was agnostic. I was in the 12-step programs. I had to read the chapter about being agnostic many, many, many times. I was like, listen, I just don't know, I'm not going to like build a whole framework of belief around something that I do not know about. And I was very scientific minded. I even really for a while believed that like when we die, it's just black. I was like, this is what we're doing here. And after this, there's nothing. And then I studied psychology. I worked in rehabs. I wasn't really big on the alcohol. I was big on the hard drugs. And it took me to like really dark places where, yeah, you like reach out for help, and it was somebody pulling a book, The Secret Language of Birthdays, and reading the page for my birthday that I was like, wow, that is freakishly accurate. And then, yeah, I just dove in. And then I realized what astrology really was. And I was like, oh, it is a science. My mind is like very scientific minded. I'm like, oh, there's patterns, there's cycles, this makes sense to me. And I was obsessed, like completely obsessed. All right. So, what are you drinking? You got some tea?
I do got some tea. Um this is kind of my standard daily tea, actually. I was gonna make something fancier, but I just wanted it. So this is ginger, burdock, and clove, with a little bit of lemon juice. I drink this almost every day of my life. It's super good for digestion, very good for reducing inflammation, really good for regulating mast cells, so helping with histamine. I have like a histamine intolerance thing. And yeah, it's also just very delicious and very warming. And we have a cold, blustery day. So that's what I have today. Nothing Aquarian or anything fancy. What
I
about
was
you?
going to say that sounds very warming. It's pouring rain here. Well, it has stopped recently, but it has been very rainy. And I live in Southern California, so that is abnormal for us. It's kind of like the end of the world when it does rain. I am drinking an Aquarius specific tea from the Magic Hour Tea brand. She's also an astrologer and an herbalist, and she kind of like makes them with a lot of intention. And so I've been drinking these for each of these videos. This one's like a black tea blend, but it's very sweet. It has a lot of vanilla in there. I haven't tried it yet, but it smells really good. All right. Where should we start? Should we start? Maybe we have the eclipse today, so maybe we can start with how this new eclipse story is kicking off. We're like in between two eclipse cycles right
Yeah.
now. So we're still kind of closing out the Pisces Virgo eclipse story. The nodes are still in Pisces and Virgo. They don't shift into Leo and Aquarius until this summer. But we've already had today, actually, it was like 4 a.m. my time. We've already had our first eclipse on the Aquarius Leo axis. So we're kind of
Yeah.
between these two. I want to kind of talk about, especially with you here, we've had the South Node in Virgo, which has a lot to do with like health. I'm having an astrologer on for the next eclipse who's a medical astrologer, and we're going to kind of focus a lot on that as well. But I wanted to kind of get your 2 cents on the cycle that we've kind of been closing out with this North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo, and then what that shift into Leo and Aquarius might kind of look like for us if we learned our lessons with the Pisces, the Pisces and Virgo.
Well, so with the North Node moving into Pisces and like transiting through Pisces, it's been a lot of kind of spiritual growth and spiritual development, a lot of diving into the woo, the creative, the nebulous, the less tangible, and bringing in that Virgoan component, but maybe letting go of the rationality, like needing everything to be rational, logical, linear, needing to have a reason why, needing to have like this mental energy around everything. Like sometimes there's not, it's just like what we were just talking about. Like sometimes there's not a rational, logical explanation, but you experience something, you feel it, you sense it, you pick up on it. It's not always a thing that you can scientifically prove. It's not always a thing that you can, with your rational mind and rational logic, explain to somebody and make them believe it. It's just something that has to be felt and lived. And that's a lot of that Virgo Pisces axis, especially with the North Node, which is about growth. It's about, expansion. It's about movement into something that's a big part of our destiny and our development. And so we're developing into this space of compassion, interconnectivity, realizing that what we do impacts everyone and everything, even in subtle ways that don't necessarily have to make sense. So a lot of embracing that, and the way that it shows up depends on the area of our charts, obviously, that we have Pisces. So if you look at your chart, whatever house Pisces lies in, those topics and themes have been really lit up. And there's also been a lot of change and transformation and upheaval going on on this axis in our charts and in our lives. And so, yeah, there could be health implications, but Virgo is not always about health. It depends on your chart. So when it comes to medical astrology, you can't necessarily say a blanket statement like South Node in Virgo is going to affect everyone's health because it's just not. It'll affect some people's health, but so will the South Node in, Aquarius. So will the South Node in Leo, anywhere. It just depends on the configurations in your chart and how it's being hit by these eclipses. So, yeah, maybe, in the collective, more stuff around health has come up, obviously. We've
I
seen
think with my clients,
this.
I've seen like a focus, not so much on like health stuff coming up, but like having to pay attention to your healing, like in
Yeah.
however way it kind of shows up in your chart. For me, it transited my Mars and now it's on my ascendant. Like it definitely revolved around like my vitality. But like
Mhm.
for my clients, it's all been just like shifts towards living healthier, however that may
Yes.
look. And of course it's going to revolve around what house it falls in for
Mhm.
you. And then there being like kind of karmic lessons around how perhaps you haven't been living healthier, you know? Have you seen this too? Yeah.
It
No?
depends on it. I mean, it depends on the client and the configurations of their chart.
Mhm.
Um, Definitely, I think people in general are having more health issues. I
Yeah.
think that that's been growing and becoming a bigger thing for many years. And so the fact that you're seeing that more with your clients, that they're feeling like they have to work harder for their health, that's a trend that's been ongoing for a very long time. So I wouldn't be surprised if a South Node, North Node transit, especially like for you on your ascendant, Mars, like Mars is literally your immune system. It's so many things that are important for your health and vitality. And your ascendant is literally your physical body. So anyone who has a configuration like that, I would say, of course, it's time to pay more attention to your health. And I think that's just what time it is because we've been dealing with this onslaught of toxicity, of weird frequencies, of living in this unnatural way where we live in these synthetic boxes where nothing is natural, nothing is aligned with what our evolution has imbued us with the ability to handle. And our bodies are deteriorating as a result of that. And even when you do your absolute best, even if you live in the middle of the woods with no connection to anything, off the land, eating the healthiest food, getting all the exercise, there's still shit being sprayed in the air. There's still Wi-Fi now coming from satellites. Like you're not going to just be able to be not exposed to something. And so we're having to work harder in a way that we've never had to historically ever in order to just baseline exist and not feel like crap every day. And that's everyone.
Yeah.
It's everyone. So um yeah, I think that's a theme of the times that we're in.
I've also noticed with myself, particularly, is the South Node in. I have Virgo ascendant, and you have Virgo placements too,
Mhm.
Virgo Mars. So, like, Virgo themes are very strong in my life, particularly perfectionism, like
Mhm.
chronic perfectionism that
Yeah.
manifests as procrastination, where I literally cannot act. And I think it's because of that Mars placement, obviously. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's part of what the South Node has forced me to kind of work through. Because when the South
Mhm.
Node comes by, I always look at it as this like karmic vacuum cleaner where it like forces you to do like a cleanup in that area of your chart so you can strive towards that North Node new beginning. There's something
Yeah.
you got to kind of work through there. And for me, it's definitely been those like traditional Virgo stereotypes,
Yeah.
where it's like the chronic perfectionism that keeps me paralyzed to where I can't act. I've learned, and I'm really kind of starting to embody this now as it's crossing my ascendant, that nothing's ever going to be perfect, and you have to just move forward with it. But I've seen that with a lot of my clients, especially the ones that have strong
Yeah.
Virgo placements. We've really been like, okay, we can't cripple ourselves like this.
Absolutely. And again, not having to like logic it all out and have it all make sense and prove to everyone else that it makes sense. It's really about trusting your intuition. that's been a big theme, and definitely letting go of perfectionism. I have absolutely seen that time and time again, and I've experienced that definitely with my Virgo sun as well as a part of this. And tying in kind of with that and the medical stuff too, Virgo actually rules the like small intestine, the digestive system. And one of the things I have actually seen a lot more is people needing to work on their gut health. And so having that south node, which is a weakening and a leakiness and a loosening, and people are like, oh, I have leaky gut. I have this gut issue. I have whatever, something's wrong with my digestion. People are looking at their gut health a little bit more. And that actually, so when you look at medical astrology, you can see how certain areas of the body, certain functions, certain things that come up are tied to these like different psychological issues, personality traits, emotional components, environmental influences. And so when you think about Virgo, Virgo is very perfectionistic, very critical, but also very self critical and just wanting everything to be like logical, linear, and very as far as earth signs go, the most nervous because it's a mutable sign. So it's not very grounded. It's the least grounded of the earth signs. And so definitely there is something there with like the perfectionism tied in, and like the anxiety around needing to get it right. Like that is such a Virgo thing. Like feeling anxious because you need to get it right, whatever right means. You might not even know what right means, but it needs to be right if you are a Virgo. And that actually is tied to like some of these gut issues. And so, like, I don't know, seeing those connections, I think, are kind of fun because it helps you see, like, it's not all just like, oh, you need to take probiotics. It's like, well, maybe there's something else going on here that's psychological, that's emotional, that's tied into, the issues you're experiencing with your gut. And if somebody has strong placements in Virgo tied to their ascendant, their sixth house ruler, their sun, their moon, right? Moon has to do with digestion too. And then the south node comes in, like all of a sudden you're like, why do I feel like crap? And, part of it is potentially letting go of that perfectionism and that stress and anxiety and tension that comes with it, because we know through scientific research that these things impact the body, they impact the nervous system, and they definitely impact your digestion too.
That's so interesting that you mentioned the digestion. I am not versed in medical astrology. I've dabbled a little bit, but that is not my forte. But I find it very interesting and freakishly accurate. And I have also been focusing on my digestion, although it's mostly just probiotics. So after I say this, I would like to hear what else we could do. And then I've noticed, I know Virgo governs pets, and I
Mhm.
have noticed a lot with my clients, a lot of issues with their pets passing while the South Node was in
Oh, yeah.
Virgo. I have been focusing a lot on like my pet's health. And right now, the focus is on, I've already cured the cats of like a million different things, but now the focus is on the dog who will not stop biting and scratching to the point where he is like bleeding. I have to put him
Aw.
in clothes and shoes. And I mean, I feed him really good fresh food, but I think he has like yeast buildup. And so I've been focusing on his gut, like
Yeah.
probiotics, omega 3s, even like moringa, which is like an
Mhm.
antifungal. And I'm using like special shampoos and all this stuff. But I've noticed a lot of like pet things come up
Mhm.
over the past year, especially a lot of losses.
Absolutely. I mean, I've experienced that too.
Mhm.
And I've seen that a lot with friends, with clients, with neighbors, just with people in my life. It was a big, like, 18 months of just loss and difficulty and death involving people's pets and people's animals. And that is unfortunately an energy that's tied to Virgo and the South Node in Virgo for sure.
Speaking of pets, I have a cat meowing crazy at the door. If I don't let her in, she's not gonna stop. If you don't
Okay.
give her one chance to be good,
Yeah. Let the
you
kitty in.
get into mischief, you're getting kicked out.
Oh, hi, Amanda. Amanda's
She
here.
said, "I knew you were talking about me." Oh, you wanna sit up here? Okay, that's fine. You can sit up here. Here's your pillow.
Oh, hi,
Shh,
kitty.
don't mess. This is her name is Zoff. She came with that name, Zopf. We adopted her. Apparently, it's German bred. We didn't change it because we couldn't decide on a name, but we call her Mama Girl because she's a mama's girl.
Okay.
She's a good girl, but she's not gonna knock over the tea. All right. So we're shifting from this. Oh, a little bit. Tell us a little bit beyond probiotics, because like the only thing I know, probiotics, maybe some like fermented food, which I don't like a lot of fermented foods. I could do
Okay, that might
kombucha, but
not
I
be the
know it has
best.
a lot of sugar.
So it depends. Like, it depends on what issues you have with your gut and like what the origin is and the root cause is. And some of that you can get into by looking at the chart, of course, and diving in a little bit deeper. But it really just depends. So, like, fermented foods can be a little bit problematic for some people. If you have a histamine intolerance, like I do, for example, that will make your gut worse and it'll make all of your symptoms worse. If you have like candida and issues with candida, you have to be very careful about what types of fermented drinks and foods. Like, you shouldn't be drinking sugary things like kombucha, right? You shouldn't have
Yeah.
anything that's fermented with sugar. And also, when you have something that's fermented with sugar, you have this bacteria that you're putting into your body that is craving sugar because it's intended to digest and, digest
Yeah,
sugar.
exactly.
And so you're just going to crave more sugar. I don't like kombucha. I think it's a bad idea, but if you do, like, you can do the June kombucha, which is a little bit better, just not something with cane sugar. But I don't think fermented foods are always the answer. It really just depends on what you have going on. In terms of just like practices that anyone can do that would help in the Virgo area, especially if you're having just any sort of like like intestinal issues and like you're like having malabsorption, maybe your digestion just isn't correct. Looking at like what we talked about, perfectionism, having an awareness around those types of things and having practices for calming the nervous system. Your gut has its own nervous system, right? It's called the enteric nervous system. It controls the gut. It's like the gut brain. And so even doing things like taking like nervine teas and things like that can help calm all of the different nervous systems in your body. But really, like, looking at um, things like breath work, meditation, grounding, and spending time outside, catching yourself when you're having those repetitive, intrusive, negative thought loops about, like, I didn't do good enough. I need to do it this way. I need to do it that way. I need to make this list of this. I need to go do that over there. Like, catching yourself in that and just saying, stop. Like, whenever it comes up, stop your perfectionistic thoughts, your self-critical thoughts. Imagine a stop sign. Say the word stop and then just stop every time you catch yourself. Just that will totally change your entire life if you do that enough. So, yeah, I think dealing with that side of it, if we're talking just generally, would be the biggest thing. I mean, there's lots of herbs, there's lots of supplements, there's lots of different diet changes you can do, but it really depends on the person and like what's going on.
Yeah. I guess for me, I had like a really severe kidney infection and I was on like really strong antibiotics. And
Oh.
then I had a root canal that I had to be on like really strong antibiotics. And then I had a UTI that I had to be on really strong antibiotics. And it was like back to back to back. And so, like, the only thing I knew is like probiotics. This, right? Isn't that good to take
Yeah.
probiotics?
Yeah.
That will help that because I've been taking them. I've been sure hoping that it's fixing, not that I noticed any sort of like digestive upset from it. I just know like, oh, this is killing anything good that was in my gut.
Yeah. I mean, that's always good to do, repopulate with some good probiotics.
Yeah. All right. So and I like that a lot of the things that you said would help fix these health issues were very like Piscean, that North Node in Pisces. You were like meditation or this or that. Like, I love how the polarity of the signs, they always have what the other kind of needs. That's the beauty of the axes,
Yeah,
is that
integrate the
they're
opposite.
exactly two sides of that coin. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this shift that we're kind of just getting into that's shifting us into the Leo Aquarius axis. I have the dates here of the eclipses that fall on this axis if anybody kind of cares. So the first one is today, the 17th. It also coincides with lunar new year in the Chinese calendar system. Now we're in the year of the fire horse, which sounds better than the year of snake, that's for sure, because last year was not fun for me. I'm ready to set some fires and run forward. You know? So this is the first one. We have the last one in 2028. It's actually in January 26th, 2028. That one is the one I am the most interested in.
Mhm.
I pulled the chart. I sent you a screenshot of it. The
Yeah.
chart for January 26th, 2028, the last eclipse of this cycle, is off the freaking charts. It is conjunct the North Node. It's an annular ring of fire eclipse, much like today's eclipse. It's
Mhm.
conjunct the North Node. It's conjunct Pluto. We also have Mars and Mercury conjunct in Aquarius, but off at like 19. I have the chart here. It's like off more at like 19 degrees or something. I don't know. My computer is glitching. Um, it's in a trine to Uranus. So today's eclipse is in a square to Uranus, and this one will be in a trine to Uranus. Then it's also sextile Neptune. So it's in a little like mini grand trine, or like a working rectangle, or a working triangle, or like a magic triangle. I don't know. People always call those things different. What do you call two sextiles in a trine? What's your name for that?
Two sextiles in a trine. Usually a minor triangle is what I would just call it. That's
Call it like a
pretty
minor trine. Yeah.
I think that's the most common.
Yeah. Have you heard people call it a magic triangle? I've heard
People
that a
just
lot
make up
recently.
all sorts of shit. Like, sure, magic.
Like,
It's
okay,
magic.
it's magic. We'll just go with it. Yeah. Rick Levine, I apprenticed under him for a little bit. He calls it a working triangle because the sextiles, you got to put in a
That
little
makes
bit of work.
sense. I
Yeah.
like
So
that.
I like that. I'll throw that in there. I'll be like, Rick says this. Um, but yeah, that chart is off the freaking chain. As soon as the North Node, as soon as like 2026 came and I'm like looking at the 2026 astrology, I'm like, all right, the North Node moving into Aquarius, this is going to be a big deal with Pluto
Yeah.
there. Like,
Well,
that's
and
going to
it's
be
all kind
gnarly.
of leading to that, which I think is interesting, and I wanted to as you were saying that, I was like, I wonder the eclipse path because you just brought this up to me right
Mhm.
before this, and it actually goes through South America, through Peru, Brazil, but then it comes up through Spain, and what's interesting about that actually is so this eclipse right here is the prelude to what's coming. It's kind of giving us a preview, and leading up to the eclipse, we had a lot of energy around Greenland, right? And so guess where the eclipse path for the August 12th eclipse this year, guess where that goes straight through? It goes
Greenland.
straight through Greenland, but also Spain. And then this last eclipse, it ends right in Spain, like it's cutting right across Spain. So that leads me to believe, first off, that all this stuff that's going on and all this energy around Greenland, that's definitely going to become a bigger issue, especially around the next eclipse season. And then it should fully manifest. Um, by the time the eclipse season, or by the time the eclipses fully kind of move out of Leo and Aquarius, I would say, but also you look at the duration of the eclipse as the timing of the manifestation. That's a traditional way of looking at it. I don't have the duration of that eclipse right in front of me, but so there are these like 2 points here where like something is going to come up around this. It's already coming up in this sort of preview eclipse. Then we have an eclipse in August where it's like a bigger thing. And then as things move on, it's going to become an even bigger thing. But this makes me think that we need to look to Spain also as like a big player in the events that are gonna be unfolding in the world.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that August 12th eclipse was one that's this year. And then there's one in Leo in 2027 that's also in August. It's on
Mm,
August 2nd. And I was like, ooh, I wrote that one down. I'm like, this one might be significant too, because it falls at 9 degrees of Leo. It's a total solar eclipse. And so it falls opposite Pluto. It's a wide orb, a little bit of a wide orb, but it'll be opposite Pluto. Those are the two that I highlighted. I was like, this eclipse story is not going to be your average eclipse story with that Pluto being in Aquarius, and then
no.
Jupiter moving into Leo.
Yeah, and that starts, like, right off the bat, and so they're gonna come and merge together, what, like, sometime in 2027, right? Like, that's when they come into that conjunction.
I'm not sure about the South Node and Jupiter. I actually didn't look that up, but I know that the North Node and Pluto meet in November 2027.
Okay.
And so right before we went live, I was like, all right, well, when was the last time that one of the nodes hit Pluto?
Mhm.
And I wonder what happened. And so I did a little digging, and you'll find this interesting. So I'm going to read a little bit here. So we know that Pluto is like, it's associated with like the dark underbelly of things that are hidden, but it also is very penetrating and it exposes. And then the North Node or the South Node, very faded. The South Node tends to like dig things up, and the North Node tends to like push us towards some sort of new chapter in regards to what was probably dug up, right? So the last time that a node hit Pluto was in 2019, and it was the South Node, and it was in Capricorn. It was in April 2019, and it was in Capricorn. And what I found really interesting is that all of these dates that I'm going to cover here, things came out. Things were released, documents were released, things that were previously hidden were like declassified. In April of 2019, we had the Mueller report. It was the redacted version, where they were investigating the the Russian interference in the 2016 election. We also had what was known as the Argentina Declassification Project, which is where the US government turned over 47,000 declassified records from the CIA, the FBI, and the State Department related to the 1976 through 1983 military dictatorship in Argentina. And so that South Node's like digging stuff out of like stuff that happened like a while ago, right? And then Julian Assange was arrested when the South Node was conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, which has to do with like governments and what the government and these three-letter agencies are doing. And he was arrested. WikiLeaks comes up again. So the next time that a node hits Pluto is in 2010. And that was at 4 degrees of Capricorn. So it still has to do with like governments and systems of authority and whatnot. And this was when WikiLeaks began releasing over 250,000 secret diplomatic cables. I did not know what secret diplomatic cables were, so I looked it up. They're like text-based communications between governments or embassies or consulates. And so it was releasing all of these things, kind of showing how like all of these governments are working together, and it's like a bigger system of control than just your own government. And so I found that interesting that the North Node was transiting. The North Node and the South Node were both transiting Pluto in Capricorn, and the WikiLeaks were coming up in the headlines, which I find interesting considering all of the Epstein stuff coming out now, which is still
Yeah.
very heavily redacted. And I'm sure more will come out when they need to distract us from other things. So after this, we go back farther. We had one with the South Node. This one's really interesting. So in April of 2002, the South Node met Pluto in Sagittarius. Now, Sag has to do with like religion, religious institutions, and files were released like almost to the T that the South Node was transiting Pluto. Files were released they were internal church documents that showed that priests were sexually abusing children. And it was like to the T. And then we had one where the North Node met Pluto in February of 1994 at 28, it was like 27, 28 degrees of Scorpio. And this was when the Roswell UFO incident audit happened. And they wanted to locate all government records regarding the incident in 1947. And so there was like this big like public display, like we're going to investigate, we're going to get all the documents, we're going to find out for sure. And then in 1995, it was published like some bullshit story they told us. And then they also had like a public like big, like in the world stage where they made this big deal about taking all of the JFK assassination records and moving them to like the National Archives. And they were like closed down for a while during this time. And they were like being researched for a like public hearing that they then had later that year.
Weird.
So I was like, okay, these are all really significant when it comes to things being exposed in a controlled fashion, of course,
Yeah.
but things coming to light. And I feel like the North Node heading Pluto in Aquarius, it's either going to be aliens, like, it's going to be something in regards to freaking aliens, or maybe something in regards to tech
Mm.
and like the seedy underbelly of technology and exactly what they've been doing with all our fucking data. AI.
Yeah, but we already kind of know what they've been
Mhm.
doing with our data
Oh,
since the
yeah.
Edward Snowden thing, and, like, people just didn't care. And it's
No.
kinda the same thing with the Epstein stuff because anyone who's been in the alternative community for, like, any amount of time knew that all of this was happening or at least had information passed to them that, "Hey, this might be what's going on." We didn't have proof of it, but it's been talked about for
Oh, yeah.
decades now.
Mhm.
And so it's almost as if we're being desensitized to it intentionally. And now that it comes out, everyone's like, okay, whatever. Everyone's a pedophile and they're sex trafficking, and the world is run by sex trafficking pedophiles. What else is new? Like, it should be a bigger deal than it even is. I mean, there are people who are shocked by this, surprisingly, but it should be a bigger deal than it is, and I do think you're right that this could be especially with the North Node conjunction or the North Node conjunction to, um, Pluto, it could be something involving aliens because Uranus rules or not Uranus, Aquarius rules the sky, it rules, space travel, it rules, all of those types of things, and they've been just, like, softly psyoping us with disclosures, again, for decades.
Oh, yeah.
So, nobody's gonna be surprised if they're like, "Oh, yes, we've been hanging out with aliens this whole time." Everyone will be like, "Oh, okay, what else is new?" It just
Nobody's gonna
doesn't make
care. And
sense,
historically, nobody cared about any of these things I just listed here. Like,
right? And they
they're like,
should,
hey,
though.
they killed Kennedy. Hey, they did this. Hey, they did that. Nobody cares.
Because by the time that it came out, everyone already knew, and even if they didn't believe it, they've heard of this conspiracy theory, so this is not new information. Um, yeah, I if there is gonna be disclosure, I would say that, like, that time period that you were just saying, that makes sense, like, 2028.
Yeah. Yeah, 2027, 2028, right around that time, 100%. And I think, like, the only reason we see anybody even somewhat care right now about the Epstein stuff is the fact that Trump's name was in there so many times, and he has a anti-fan base that is very, very, very large, and I feel like that's the only reason why anybody even cares. I feel like if his name wasn't in there, it wouldn't nobody would even be talking about it.
Well, the ones that I keep seeing are like, yeah, Trump was in it, we already knew that. Bill Gates, we already knew that, but then there's more stuff about him, so cool. And then, Deepak Chopra was the one that was interesting, not shocking, but, like, interesting, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't really trust, like, Oprah Winfrey's gurus and, her crew, so I'm not, like, shocked by that, but that was the one that I was like, "That's interesting. That's a weird one to come out."
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and it's kind of like none of these people are getting charged with anything.
No.
They're just being dragged through the mud on social media. I mean,
Mhm.
that speaks to the nature of Pluto and Aquarius and, where the power actually stands. It's going to be more like technological, social media. It's going to be more decentralized, people kind of deciding for themselves what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be doing it. But at the same time, like these people are dangerous and have done horrible things. And they're just going to walk away because that's just how it always seems to go. So, yeah, anyway, not to be gloomy about everything.
I
Maybe
do
it'll be different.
I do think that they're gonna walk away, or at least it will be, like, prolonged for so long that a lot of these guys are gonna freaking die. Like, Trump is on his deathbed. Like, he is not gonna be alive much longer, I do not believe. He's an old, old, old man, and he does not look very healthy. I don't think he's gonna be around much longer. these eclipses will be hitting his chart really significantly. Is Leo midheaven, right? He's a Leo midheaven.
He's a Leo.
No, he's a Gemini.
Oh, he's a Gemini with a
Yeah,
Leo
he's got.
rising. Sorry.
Oh yeah, Leo rising on Regulus. Yeah, I should freaking
Yeah.
know that. Yeah, on Regulus. Yeah, so I think that they'll be hitting. I mean, as somebody who just had the South Node move through their first house, let me tell you, wow, that was not fun. It was not fun in a health sense. Like, I've never been to the ER so many times
Oh
in
gosh.
my freaking life in 1 year, you know? Let's keep it that not happening again anytime soon. But yeah, that was gnarly. And, I met with a friend of mine who I'll have on next for the next podcast, who's a medical astrologer. And she was like, yeah, it's the South Node all up on your stuff. It's zapping you of all of your vitality. I was like, it is, dude. It really is. And my will to live. um, okay, yeah. So Pluto and Aquarius, especially with the South Node, with the North Node moving in through there, I do think that maybe that's the only thing they haven't really brought out of their like Illuminati card deck. The only thing they haven't really served us yet is aliens, like fully on a platter,
Yes.
that soft disclosure. Yeah, and nobody cared. No, people literally did not care. But I do think that they have that. And then I'm interested to hear your take on the next 20 years ish of Pluto in Aquarius.
Mm.
Because I'm hearing a lot of people who are like, Pluto is the planet of power and Aquarius is humanity and it's power to the people. And yeah, I can see how that can be part of the story, but we know that these are a wide octave of how things are going to play out. And I also kind of look at it more. I want to be of the school of thought of power to the people, and we step into our power and we all come together as this brotherhood of man and we stick it to the system.
Sounds
But
like you
in
don't
my
believe that though.
I don't believe that, yeah. In my experience, Pluto, that planet of power, moving into Aquarius is really giving out of Capricorn, the like traditional world order, and into Aquarius, which literally Aquarius governs the new world order. People forget it. Saturn ruled. Like
Mm.
Aquarius is the new technocratic world order that is rooted in technology. And I feel like the power is shifting, the hand of power is shifting from traditional systems of government. We can see this happening right now where it's like, what even are our rights? Is the Bill of Rights even a thing anymore? The Constitution, is that even a thing anymore? And it's moving over into Aquarius where it's like handing the torch to this like new technocratic world government.
Mhm.
And then I feel like the power is really in the tech companies, and the power is also being handed over to AI, which is just anytime I have ventured towards AI just to kind of see, or I'll give it a chart, mostly to see if I'm going to lose a job. I see people like using it for astrology. I'm like, let me see this. It can't read a chart. Even if you give it the actual chart, it cannot read it. If you give it the birth data, the planets are going to be in the wrong place.
Mhm.
It can't read transits. It can't do anything. And like, what? This is what we're going to have ruling our world? Like, it can't even read astrology chart that's fed to it. Um, I don't use it often. I don't really use it at all, but I have used it a couple of times out of like just to see what it can do, and it
Mhm.
can't do. Have you
Yeah.
noticed this, that it just literally cannot?
So right now, where it's at is if you ask it about specific placements, like my son's in Virgo in the 10th house, it can give you a very generic pop astrology
Mhm.
like report of that. And so that's fine if that's what you want, but it does not know the dates of any. I wanted to use it just to like shorten my time of preparing for videos and things by giving me a report of the major transits coming up, like the dates, just so I don't have to look them all up. Can't do that. It just made up random transits, random dates, like things that weren't even happening at all in the next 2 years, let alone, the next month and stuff. It's
Mhm.
still doing that. So it can't do that. It can't synthesize and integrate. So one of the things about astrology that, and I was just talking about this, like my team and I were just talking about this. Amanda's here. She was talking about it with us. Hi, Amanda. Um, one of the things that astrology So it's not, astrology is not just a bunch of memorized significations and A plus B equals C, and, this plus this sign plus this planet is this exact interpretation. Yeah, there's a technical component to it, but there's also an art to it. So I always describe astrology as being a technical art. It's similar to even like psychology. Like if you are going to be a therapist, that is not an exact science. Like you have to be in flow with your client. It's a conversation, a communication. You have to be able to pick up on certain nuances. You have to be able to guide the conversation and the direction of everything in a very specific way that requires, at least right now, human intervention. The same thing with an astrology reading. A robot can't synthesize the things that are going on in the chart, and they can't give it the context that you can get when you're actually interacting with a client. And astrology is only 50% book learning. The rest is direct embodied experience. A robot cannot do that. It cannot live the experience of the astrology that's happening. And it can eventually, I'm sure we can put enough data into it where it can give you something inhuman but precise and technically correct, but it's not going to have that nuance. It's not going to have that same weight. So, yeah, as of right now, I don't see the human aspect of astrology being taken away because it's
No.
necessary.
I think it will be forever, especially for people who are truly into astrology. The people who are consuming pop astrology, maybe they will venture over there and they'll feel content with what they get from that. But as somebody who also studied a psychology, what I always like to remind people is that the word psyche does not mean mind. The word psyche is Latin and it means soul. And both astrology and psychology are soul work. It's literally work and tapping into your fucking soul. And robots don't have souls. They'll never be able to do it. They'll never be able to synthesize. They'll never be able to tap into the nuances. It's just not possible. I would think it would be possible to be like, when was the last time that such and such conjuncted such and such? Give me the freaking dates. It
No.
can't do that. It can't do anything. It cannot. It's it's so bad. It is so bad. When it comes to this, I'm sure it could maybe do some other kind of jobs well, I guess, but definitely the human element is 100% needed.
Well, and then there's like intuition and instinct, and they were even finding that when they program the AI, it has medical knowledge, but when it's put into practice, like just the AI, it's not catching everything because there are subtleties that you get from actually interacting with human beings as a medical professional that it's like a gut thing, it's an instinct thing, it's an energy thing, it's like a thing that only comes with practice and embodiment. I mean, same thing with every field. So I think it can cut corners and make things easier and more efficient for astrologers once it knows how to actually accurately collect and convey data. But I would never use it for interpretation. And even the interpretations that are a cookbook that it comes up with, it can do some cookbook astrology, but half the time it just makes up garbage. And some of those are even wrong. So it's not there yet. I'm not worried about it. It's not
I
something
am not I am not worried about it at all.
but I think
Before
we could
like
use it. I think
interacting
we could use it to make our lives easier as astrologers so we can be more effective. Like, once it's at that point of like, why not ask a robot to give us a list of the transits and, like, whatever it is that we need, like, the busy work that we have to do to, like, prepare for a reading. It takes me, like, an hour to prepare for a reading. It could probably cut that in half because I don't have to look up a bunch of stuff. Great. Like, that I think is fine.
yeah. Um I would like it to not be destroying the environment, though.
Yeah.
For me to kind of use on a regular basis, it would have to figure out how to do it without a whole bunch of our drinking water. But I know that you use the honeycomb planner. You use the honeycomb planner?
Yeah.
I love the honeycomb planner. If there's anybody out there who
I have one.
is dabbling in astrology, yeah, I've got 2025 and 2026 right here. I don't know how I did astrology without this. So much time and so much effort would go into just like one moon video, one post back when you could actually write a post on Instagram and people could see it. This really is just amazing for your personal transits
Mhm.
and for what's happening currently in the sky, what planets aspecting each other or ingressing, the moons, everything. It's amazing. Everybody needs the honeycomb planner. I keep asking them if they're going to have an affiliate program, and they're still making it. So I don't have any sort of code
Yeah.
for you, but you need it, and it's so affordable. It's the best money I've ever spent, ever.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love it.
absolutely. And I tell all my students to get it, especially when we get into transits and stuff, because you can just see what's happening every day, journal about it every day, which again is the best way to learn astrology is through that direct experience. Hey, these things are happening right now. This is what's going on. And then you can look back in your journal like a year from now when you have a similar transit coming up. Oh, I wonder what happened last year when the sun hit this point in my chart. So it's just super valuable to be able to have that. And yeah, I used to go through the year and like I would have all these notes and then like the handwritten notebook of all the transits that are coming up and how it's affecting all the things. And it was just there's there's value in doing that, right? Because you have to really think through what's happening.
Mhm.
But there's also a lot of time wasted where you could be thinking through like the deeper problems.
Yeah, and it's draining. Like when I was doing that, like before I knew that the honeycomb planner existed, and when I was, doing monthly videos where I was breaking down the whole month on YouTube, which I no longer do because those also drained the living daylights out of me. I know you're not doing client work so much anymore. You're teaching though. But like when you have a whole schedule full of clients and then you have to go do all this, like it's after I do one of those videos, I'm like, I need 3 days to decompress. Like that was nonstop mental work. Now it's so much easier. It's just there. You're like, okay, this is it. I highlight, and then I can just interpret instead of having to like map out everything and then be like, okay, what does this even mean? You know what I mean? It definitely cuts it even more than in half. I'd say it's just a freaking godsend. Oh my God. I love the
Yes.
honeycomb planner. I will advocate for them forever. And it's made by 2 astrologers. And I've never once found anything inaccurate in that planner. Have you ever found any, not even off by a minute?
No, and I've met them. They're super nice and super cool. And yeah, so I mean, I definitely support their work. And if the robots can do something that helps us in a similar way, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But kind of going back, because we were diving into Pluto and Aquarius, then we got on like a weird tangent about honeycomb almanacs. So you were asking about like the what's coming with Pluto and Aquarius? Is it like a technocratic dystopia or is it like decentralized power going back to the people? I think that there's going to be kind of a split where both things are happening.
Yeah.
Everything isn't happening in isolation. Two things can be true at the same time. And so we're definitely moving into a more technocratic era, even like with the new administration. Regardless of what you think about like Donald Trump and all of that, he was just surrounded by like tech billionaires. He's just surrounded himself with all the tech people because he knows that that's where things are going. And it used to be, and it still is, of course, that the large corporations are just smushed up with the government. They're all like one big glob now. But now it's these big tech corporations and these big tech people. And the government wants in on that, obviously, because they have all the data. They're going to have all the power. They have the ability to control the narrative very easily. And so, yeah, I think that's happening already. That's already started. That's going to be doubling down. I don't think the robots are going to take over like it's going to be some sort of AI robot dystopia movie where there's like, like the Terminator or something. I don't know. I don't watch those types of movies, but it's going to be like that. And then there are going to be these more technological systems of control and monitoring. And it's going to be more and more difficult to do things without the government knowing that you're doing things, regardless of whether you're doing something bad or not. And you just want privacy. But at the same time, I do think that because of technology, things are becoming more decentralized. Information is more decentralized. One platform starts to get all of the power to sway the narrative, and then new platforms come up like Substack and like other things because people are like, okay, well, this sucks. I'm going to go over here. This sucks. I'm going to go over here. Um, it it allows people to organize like in smaller groups for whatever purpose. If they want to like protest, they want to do this, they want to go out and take action on something, they want to do something to actually help the world instead of just sitting on social media and yelling about their opinions, they can actually connect with people that have a similar goal and they can go out and do that. So I think technology is going to help us to decentralize power a little bit, but I think it's also going to become like the power mechanism. I think it's going to be impossible for them to centralize all of that though, and to make it so there's just one cohesive system and everybody has to do what they say, because that's just not how technology works.
Yeah. I think that it's going to be not like robot apocalypse,
Yeah.
Terminator. I think it's going to be more like 1984, eye in
Mhm.
the sky, Big Brother's watching. But then I think that Pluto and Aquarius, like Pluto is death. And I feel like we're going to see like a death. We already see this happening. Like Instagram, dead.
Mhm.
TikTok dying because of the control coming forward. Everybody's venturing over here to Substack. Substack will eventually probably die too.
Yeah.
Like people are tired and sick of the algorithms and the scrolling and the internet. And then the North Node moving into Aquarius is going to have us getting back out into the actual community,
Mhm.
hanging out with actual people for actual connection. I feel like Pluto in Aquarius is going to bring a death to some of those technological systems that like consumed our lives. I'm already doing this. I had a lot of 11th house transits. And so I've really been getting out into the community, doing a lot of like magic markets, mystic markets, reading charts for people in real life, which I love my clients. I love reading via Zoom. It's nice. It's great. But something is different when you're reading and that person is right there and like your auras are like able to kind of reach out and connect with each other, and just like the sense of community that we felt like we were getting with social media. You really realize when you get back out into the actual community of like-minded people that like, no, that was a facade. That was not real connection. It definitely helped us connect our minds so we could share information in a way that really needed to be shared over the past couple of years.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have the same soul to it that real life interactions do. And I feel like, as just like in 2020, as the hand of the New World Order gets tighter around our throats, people are going to become activists for something else, and they're going to start to revert back to what really matters, which is connecting to your fellow man, the sense
Mhm.
of like real community, getting out there. I already see that happening here. Like these markets that I go to, there's a lot of people come and everybody is so nice and so friendly. And I'm sure we don't agree on all of our political leanings because you know me, I'm very tinfoil hat in the middle. I think everybody's batshit crazy, except for me and my tinfoil hat. But I love it. I love it so much out there. And I feel like that North Node is going to be like, all right, we need to strive towards this at the same time that like something is dying there. Pluto.
Well, and Pluto, you bring up a good point, because Pluto, every time it transits a certain sign, it's like a doubling down and a consolidation of power, because Pluto's power and control. It's this like very laser focused, all in or not type of energy, but it's also, it exposes things. And so there's a doubling down of the power structures, but then there's also an exposure of sort of the shadow, for lack of a better term, or kind of like the nasty side of things. And so we saw that at the end of that Pluto in Capricorn transit. There was not just a doubling down, but like a 100 times doubling down, like whatever that would be, 100 down of multiplying, of like really wanting to have this systematic, top down, hierarchical control that was coming from the government, right? And so we saw that toward the end of that transit, but we also saw at the very same time a lot of people waking up to what was going on, because it was being exposed. It was in our faces. Like it was so in our faces that you couldn't ignore it. And so it's going to be the same thing with all the technology stuff. Like there's going to be a doubling down of it. It's going to be, and especially during this first bit when the North Node transits a certain sign, it blows things up. It's like this insatiable need for growth. And it's like obsession with this thing. So, obsession with AI, obsession with developments in technology. Pluto brings obsession as well. But Pluto is also going to be exposing the dark side of things. And people are already starting to see that at the very onset of Pluto moving into Aquarius. Like you said, like people are like, I don't actually think this is good to be doing this anymore. I don't think I should be scrolling. I don't think I should have all this crap on my phone. I think I should actually go out and talk to people. Like maybe that would be good. Very basic things, but like in this day and age, that's kind of revolutionary.
Sorry, I just got a text up there. Yeah, I always like to remind my clients that or like when I'm doing a video and I'm talking about Aquarius, it's like, yes, Aquarius governs technology. It governs the New World Order, whether it be like this utopian ideal or this technological dystopia. But it also governs our humanity and what it means to be human. And I feel like as the technological prison really gets built around us, we're going to feel our soul being like strangled, and we're going to reach out more for that. Like we're going to try to hold on to our humanity as it is really being like siphoned away in favor of the machine, right? And what I like is that, the South Node and Jupiter will be in Leo. Leo is where we shine, right? It's our creative instincts.
Mhm.
It has so much to do with the expression of the individual
Mhm.
and the act of creation itself. And I feel that we will be forced to kind of reclaim that. That South Node is like, hey, you have given your vitality away
Mhm.
to the machine a little bit too much here. And
Yeah.
in order to really step back into what it means to be human, you have to start tapping into that spark of self, you
Mhm.
know? I really
Absolutely.
feel like just like in 2020 as they push forward, more people realize, you know what I mean? And I feel that like a lot of people are realizing they're very right now I feel like exhausted. Like the
Mhm.
normies are just like, oh wow, like we thought my tinfoil hat cousin was a nut job, but now we see that like maybe he was on to a little bit of something. Like, yeah, like everybody is a fucking pedophile. Like, what is going on here? And it's kind of like they're just fatigued by the thought of having to process all this. Like, we
Yeah.
had a really long time to kind of come to terms with this, those of us
Yeah.
who've been dabbling, you know what I mean? And I feel people are either they do not care or they're spiraling. People are spiraling right now.
There are some people that are taking this really hard and having a really hard time with it, as you should. As you should. I'm a little concerned that I am not taking it that hard. You know what I mean? Like, I'm seeing this and I'm like, "Wow, this is horrible," but also
We
it's
already
about
knew.
time that, like, this came out. Like, we've been hearing about this for so long. We've known that this is a potential of of our reality, and we believe that this is probably what's going on, even if we didn't have exact proof, and now we know. So, it's that would be a lot to just if you never heard of this and you had no idea and you've never heard any conspiracy theorists ever even talk about it because 'cause you're in your bubble, and then this comes at you, this would be absolutely earth-shattering.
Yeah. And I think that, it's like this little drip of disclosure that they do with everything. And they do it to really distract us from other things that they're doing. This is, of course, distracting us from the infrastructure being built. Palantir, this is the stuff we really should be talking about. We've already known about this. Not that we shouldn't address it and talk about it, but they always let things out into the public so that the public grabs on, talks about this thing while they're doing other things,
Yeah,
you know?
I believe that to be true as well. I mean,
100%. And they're not done. Like, most of the names were redacted. Like, we
yeah.
still don't know who's sending any of these emails. And I feel like they're saving that for maybe one of these future parts of this eclipse story. You know what I mean? Maybe when the node gets closer to Pluto, and maybe some more things will come out. And then when people start to see some of their people in there. Some of these names get exposed. That's not just, you know, fringe guru Deepak Chopra or Bill Gates, who we already know is a freaking maniacal monster, or Trump, who we already know is just god awful. When some of these other names come out, I feel like that's when the normies are really going to spiral. I feel like you and I, like, I'm not taking it very hard either. I'm kind of just like, hey guys, thanks for catching up to the people who are kind of catching on, but it's because, yeah, we already knew. And I actually think it's a lot worse than what has come out. I'm waiting for the worst stuff to come, because the way I have it envisioned in my mind, it's a lot worse than what has been exposed thus far.
I mean, hopefully that's not the case, but yeah, I could see it getting worse, and that could be more of the stuff that's like the disclosures coming out and all that. So yeah, we'll see where that leads
Yeah.
because that's been a big thing.
All
Yeah.
right, maybe we should shift to the Neptune Saturn conjunction.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Neptune Saturn conjunction is exact on the 20th, in just a couple of days.
Yep.
And it falls at 0 degrees of Aries. Now,
Mhm.
0 degrees of any sign is a critical degree. Um, 0 degrees of the cardinal signs are known as the world axis or the world angles, because that's where we have our solstice points and our
Mhm.
equinox points. And it's believed that when we have major activations to 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, that we see really significant public or outward or like global events happen. And so 0 degrees of Aries particularly is the most significant of any 0 degree point, because it starts the zodiac itself.
Yeah.
And 0 degrees are these initiatory parts, and cardinal signs are also very initiatory. And so they spark something new into being. And so before we get into Neptune and Saturn and all of that, I want to get your 2 cents on the fact that it falls at 0 degrees. Like, what are you thinking about that?
I mean, that's a big, massive reset, right? Like, this is the dawn of a new era. So I haven't fact checked this, but I saw a reputable astrologer post that the last time that we had this conjunction at 0 degrees Aries was about 6,000 years ago, which was the dawn of civilization. It was the dawn of like
That's
what we
very
know, at least in terms of written history and what we have record of, the dawn of civilization. So that was a big moment in time. I'm sure that's not the only thing that was going on then to make that happen, right? But it was a thing that was happening. And so these Saturn Neptune cycles, they do bring about major world events. I did a video with Dan Waits, who's a really good mundane astrologer. He was talking about some of these past cycles. And one of the things that we talked about was like, last time around, the fall of the Berlin Wall. Like, that's a huge major event. There are a lot of big political events that occur. There's a lot of themes around things like communism, specifically with the Saturn Neptune conjunction. So, big developments in communism, either the like rise or fall of different regimes and things like that. And there's also a lot of energy around oil. Neptune rules oil, and we're, already seeing that. Literally, we had, as we're leading up to this, the United States just took over Venezuela, and they were openly saying this is for oil. And that's just not something that's normal to not only just, I mean, it's normal for the US to go after oil, but like to do that and then just like say that this is what it is and like not have any pretense around it is truly bizarre, and that's a very Aries thing, right? It's like, I want what I want when I want it, and this is what I'm doing, and, whatever. Like, I don't care what you think about it. That's such an Aries approach to things. Um, so, yes, so for one, I think this is a big turning point. This is the beginning of a brand new era because this is not just one of the world points, but it's 0 degrees Aries, the very beginning of the zodiac. Something really big and new is being birthed. I think some of those themes were already apparent. So we're seeing at the onset, like the themes that are going to be coming up more and more and more. Um, and a lot of people think that this is going to be like spiritual warfare or something along those lines. Sure, maybe. Um, yeah, I think it's more tangible than that.
Yeah, I think it's more tangible than that. I think that in regards to spirituality, Neptune moving out of Pisces and into Aries, I feel like we're going to see a big shift from in the spiritual spaces that we find ourselves in, and everybody is going to be moving more towards a more like self-led spiritual practice very pioneering, where they're rooted more in like instincts and the individuation process, like really focused on the spiritual evolution of the self, as opposed to maybe like women's circles or group dynamics or these things that with Pisces, with Neptune and Pisces, we kind of saw really kind of take off. You know, like spiritual communities are probably going to see a shrinking in favor of a more like individual spiritual path that people are going to be like, I need to just go figure this out for myself.
That makes
You
sense.
know, in Pisces, it's very boundaryless. We're kind of part of the whole. We're all kind of merging together. In Aries, it's like, well, I'm just going to go my own way, you know? And I feel like we're really going to see that. I don't think I feel like Neptune and Pisces was more spiritual warfare, not like warfare in the sense of like spiritual psyops, I guess, like a lot of like spiritual manipulation. And we've seen like the spiritual realm really targeted in regards to the current psyops. We saw like QAnon take off in spiritual spaces. You know, they really like came for us during Neptune and Pisces. And I feel like a lot of people are going to realize that the illusion, whatever sort of fantasy illusion they fell into with Neptune and Pisces, is going to come crashing down a little bit with Aries. And we're going to have to truck out on a new path, like a new hero's journey where we're like, okay, maybe we fell a little bit into something that wasn't necessarily authentic or true, but it was a learning experience. Remember, Saturn was there too. So like when Neptune was in Pisces, we also, for part of that, had Saturn in Pisces. And so there were tests there. And now they're moving into Aries, where, you know, I'm really interested to hear what you think about Saturn in Aries, because Saturn is at fall in Aries. Saturn governs authority, structures of control. And when Saturn's in Aries, we all are ticked the fuck off with daddy. You know what I mean? Daddy government, any sort of system. And we really will have these like clashes with authority, whether it be in our lives or in the world stage. And so I'm interested to hear what you think about Saturn and Aries when it comes to like clashes with authority or these systems of authority in general.
So, kind of like two parts to this.
Mhm.
So, going back to kind of some of the stuff we were saying before, and this Neptune moving into Aries and Saturn being with Neptune in Pisces, I did kind of a deep dive when I was researching Saturn and Pisces, and there's a lot of energy around gurus and cults and people having cult followings, and very little like cult activity seems to come to the forefront. Even if it didn't start then, it's like more in the forefront. And one of the things we saw during that time at the very end of Neptune and Pisces when Saturn came in was all these documentaries about cults, all these people like influencers being accused of being cult leaders and having cults. And it really was, it was like the cult of the online guru and the cult, like it wasn't the same as like it has been in the past where, you know, everyone's there and they're drinking the Kool-Aid and they're, you know, together. It was more like online cults and people being accused of being cult leaders who are just like influencers in the spiritual community. And like maybe they were cult leaders. I don't know. But that became a big thing. And one of the things that I really thought was going to happen with Saturn moving into Aries and Neptune moving into Aries is kind of like the death of the guru. Um, and instead of idealizing that, we're idealizing like sovereignty and independence, like you just said. But literally, we just see like right as this is happening, the one of the names on the Epstein list is Deepak Chopra. I think that's the first of many exposures of like gurus and people that we sort of give our sovereignty over to because we are looking for answers. We're looking for guidance. Like we don't know how to navigate this ourselves. And so we give our power away to these people because, you know, Oprah knows him and he's on TV and he's on Gaia and he's over here. And, you know, he's saying all the right things. So I think there's a death of that for sure and an end to that. And that power structure, because that is its own power structure, is, I think, coming to an end. And that's not just Saturn, that's Neptune. Saturn moving into Aries is an interesting one because Saturn wants to do things slowly. Saturn wants to take its time. Saturn delivers lessons, and sometimes they're actual lessons. Like, we don't like them. They're hard lessons. We have to work hard. We have to be self-disciplined. We have to do you know, all those responsible things. But when Saturn's in a nice placement, there's some sort of payoff usually. Saturn in Aries, not necessarily so. Saturn in Aries is like under Mars's domain. It's this thing is happening right now. It's probably a reap what you sown energy. So you kind of messed this up in the past, or you neglected this, or you didn't take responsibility for this. All of a sudden, it's coming up right now. And you can't plan it out. You can't get a solid foundation for dealing with this properly. You just have to do it in the moment. And it's probably not going to be your best work. And it might not last. You might have to redo it later on when it's another Saturn transit, but you have to do it now. And that's really uncomfortable. And there's actually no lesson with Saturn in Aries. Like, we always want it to be like this elevated thing where, oh, everything's a lesson. And yes, it is to a certain extent, but there's not like a payoff to this. It's kind of like we're just having to react to things that normally would take a lot more time to properly deal with. So, that's a big part of it too. In terms of authority, I think taking back our authority is the biggest thing. Um, I could see what you're saying about being mad at anyone who's trying to tell us what to do. It's very much Aries. And Saturn is like wanting to create our own structure, wanting to create our own framework, wanting to create our own rules. I don't know that we get to do that though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like with Neptune, we have the like illusion or delusion that we can do that. You know what I mean? This like idealistic vision that we can do that, but executing it, I'm not necessarily sure. I think it's so interesting what you said about cults though, because Aquarius also governs cults because it governs groups and groupthink and like
Mm.
cult mentality. And Pluto moving into Aquarius is definitely going to bring like an ending to those kind of groups and that group think. And I feel like the Neptune in
Mm.
Pisces was like the cult leader. And then like Aquarius is like the group that follows. And I feel like they're definitely going to go through this metamorphosis where they ideally with Saturn moving into Aries is I like how you said like taking our authority back a little as much as we can, I feel like. So I jotted down a couple things when I was like kind of thinking about this transit. I love that the 0 degree, it's happening at 0 degrees because it definitely does feel really significant. It
Mhm.
is that not just like the start of a sign, but it's the start of the whole zodiac. And so while these planets were transiting through Pisces, it was a major ending, especially they were so close together for so long. They dipped in 2025, they went back in, and now they're finally out. And what I have here is I feel like it's going to be like the death of an old, like, collective dream and the birth of a new reality. But, like, what is that gonna look like is the big question. And then last night, I'm glad I wrote this down in my notes app because I was sleeping and then I, like, woke up. I don't know, maybe we were having the podcast in the dream, I'm not sure. But I woke up and I had, like, this, like, little sentence, in my mind, and I was like, "Oh, that's perfect for the Neptune-Saturn conjunction." I'm like, "I'm gonna write this down. I'm gonna bring this up tomorrow in the podcast." And very Neptune, like, literally came to me in a dream. It's not super profound or anything, but I was like, "Okay, this is good. I'll bring this up." And so I wrote, "You cannot fight Aries. You cannot fight for the new world if you are still kind of holding on to the one that's dissolving before your very eyes. Neptune dissolves structures and systems.
Mm.
The last time we had the Neptune Saturn conjunction, yes, was in 1989. And we had the literal fall of the Berlin Wall. Like Saturn governs walls and Neptune dissolves those. But then
Mhm.
together, they ideally build new systems and structures that are more infused with Neptunian themes, which, yes, can be like illusion, delusion, unreality, like AI and things like that. But it also can be our spirit and our soul. And I feel like it's going to be twofold. You know what I mean? Um, so I wrote here that last time we had the fall of the Berlin Wall, What do we think our modern day wall is? I think it's interesting that in 1989, we also had the World Wide Web be invented at CERN. And so I feel like our new wall is the internet and the things that we have built around ourselves. And I'm wondering if it's going to be like a twofold thing, like everything is, right? Saturn solidifies. And so people are going to be more solidified into that like virtual reality, that unreality, while some of us, I feel like, are going to step more into our authority and ideally kind of bring down that wall
Mhm.
and go back out into the world. Saturn is reality too. It's so interesting to have the planet of unreality and the planet of reality meet. It's like they're battling for dominance, and Saturn is at its fall.
Yeah.
So, what do you think our modern wall is? Not that you can pick one thing, but you know.
I think you're onto something with, like, the reality and the unreality and, like, the internet themes, because that is interesting. I didn't realize that the internet was birthed around that time period. Um, and then you brought up CERN, and then it makes me think of a video I just watched earlier today about CERN. I'm like, maybe the timelines will be broken and we will be in a reality where, you know, something else weird is happening. Like, who the hell
Girl, you
knows?
better knock on some
Saturn rules
wood.
time. It's like maybe the wall this time is literally like a dissolving of our structure of time because CERN collapses everything and then everything is just crazy. Like, I don't know.
I rebuke that. Oh my gosh. But yeah, we have to talk about Neptune and like the AI unreality, right? And then Saturn helping to kind of like solidify that a little bit more. Like AI is not going anywhere. What I do like is that what I have noticed is that it is one of these themes that is like nonpartisan or whatever. Like I see people on like both sides of the political spectrum realizing that like AI is not where it's at. You know, this is bad for us. And I see it a lot on the left, mostly because of the environment and what it does with artists and art and things like that, how it's pretty much stealing everybody's art. That seems to be what they kind of hold on to. And then the right is like, it's the beast system, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I agree with you both. You know what I mean? But I feel like Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 degrees is going to help solidify that unreality a little bit more. And I feel like this is going to be part of that push that then makes people pull back. You know, when you are scrolling and all you're seeing is like AI videos, you know, even the freaking cat videos. I'm like, you're really going to ruin my cat videos where I have to be like, is this real? Is this fake? And everything you're asking yourself that constantly. Is this real? Is this fake? Usually I can tell, and then I'll go to the comments and they'll be like one lone guy who can also tell. And everybody else is like, that's so cute. That's so funny. I'm like, come on, you guys, it's not even real. And I feel like we really are going to see, especially like the boomers cannot tell. They're just hook, line, and sinker for AI content. They have no idea what is real or fake anymore. And then I feel like us millennials, because we were, do you have Pluto in Scorpio?
Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like we were born and grew up before the internet. And so we were like in the real world. And then we had the internet come. And so we have this unique ability to kind of sense real from fake. And I feel like it's also our Pluto and Aquarius. I talked about this a lot in the last episode of this podcast, how the Pluto Scorpio generation has their Pluto being squared right now by Pluto in Aquarius as it moves through
Mhm.
Aquarius. And then the younger generation, like they were born into this technological reality. And so maybe it's harder for them to kind of tell because they've had their face in a screen their whole life. And I feel like the boomers, I think they're just too old to kind of tell. But we have this unique perspective, Gen X too. I would say Gen X as well. We have this unique perspective. And I feel like we're so needed right now. And I feel like we're really going to be leading the charge in a lot of these things. We talked about that in the last video, how, the square, this Pluto square, we are being activated in a way. As Pluto transits through Aquarius, taking humanity through this plutonic realm that we have lived in our whole life. You know what I mean? Like, we have this penetrating gaze that can see beyond the bullshit, and now humanity is being pulled beyond the bullshit, and they're kind of freaking out. And I feel like we're the voice of reason. Like, I feel like we really are this voice of reason. All right. We have to talk about one more thing, and then I'm going to see if there's anything else you want to add. So we have, the last time we had the Neptune-Saturn conjunction, the internet, the World Wide Web was invented.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is part of the wall that will be coming down for some of us, because I feel like a lot of us are just sick and tired. I really am. If I did not need this to run my business, I would be gone, and I'm building a new website and figuring out the funnel and all the things that you're supposed to do as a business owner, not just like, I'm going to post a meme and hope that I get clients. I'm trying to like do the business the right way. I know you're so good at that. But I want to talk about like the internet through the context of not only this Neptune-Saturn conjunction, which we have coming through again, but we also have Pluto in Aquarius and then Uranus moving into Gemini. I feel like Uranus moving into Gemini is just going to be, and I wrote an article here on Substack you guys can go find when Uranus dipped in, but I feel like it's just going to be this even more onslaught of information, just constant, where people are like, make it fucking stop. And I feel like, again, as things push forward and they get so extreme and so intense, that people will revert back to a slower pace and real life interactions. But what do you think about the Neptune-Saturn conjunction having literally created the internet? And now we have another one at 0 degrees of Aries, the same time that Pluto is in Aquarius and Uranus is moving into Gemini. Like, I feel like that has so much to do with tech.
Yeah, and I think it's no coincidence that, we had this birth of the internet, and now we're at this, like, advent of this AI sort of revolution that's happening, where AI is taking over everything. And so, like you said, first off, yes, absolutely. Uranus and Gemini, there's going to be so much information. A lot of it's going to be generated by AI. It's just going to be like thrusted at it. It already is, but that's just going to be doubling down. Um, in terms of the Saturn Neptune component, this kind of goes back to that Saturn in Aries. And we are being given right now this responsibility, right? This responsibility for this new form of technology that is changing the entire way that humanity exists and communicates and lives. And we're being given it so fast before we are ready. We cannot put the right foundations in place. There cannot be the right rules and regulations around it if you believe in those types of things. It is just happening, and then we have to deal with the aftermath. It's very much that exact same scenario that I was just talking about that people are having on this personal level. But it's now with AI, it's now with like all this technology. We are being given a huge responsibility. And this responsibility has implications for our personal lives, the way we connect with one another, has implications for our planet and the ecosystems and our water, which Saturn and Neptune. Neptune rules water. Saturn is very dry, dries things up. Aries is very hot and dry. And here out in the west and in the southwest, I think you're in California, you probably have the same situation. The water situation is starting to get a little scary, especially because my husband is an ecological restorationist and his whole thing is like water. And like that's all he talks about is like how like we are just so screwed when it comes to water. And then you add in this component with AI. And, I'm not on either side of the political spectrum. I just see with my own eyes, like what is going on. And the fact of the matter is we need water to drink. We need water to grow food. We need water, for irrigating our crops and all that. And we don't have water to spare to give to computers and robots and whatnot. Like we just don't. We don't. People in the Midwest might not see it because we have like the Great Lakes up there. But if you're here in the West, you're like, water is a big deal. So anyway, we have this big responsibility. It's all happening all at once. we don't have the right foundations in place. We're not going to be able to put the right foundations in place because it's just happening. So instead of setting it up right, we are dealing with the repercussions of that and having to kind of back engineer everything. That I think is going to be the biggest source of overwhelm in the next couple of years, especially this year. I just, yeah, that's my take on it, I guess. That was just a rant.
We're just ranting tangents. That's just how we're doing here. Okay, I did want to ask you though, from like a medical astrology perspective, how would you look at the Neptune Saturn conjunction in Aries? Aries governs the head, right? What else does it govern? How would that affect us individually? I'm sure it wouldn't matter what house it falls in, but like as a collective, the Neptune Saturn conjunction in Aries.
So I was just talking about this with Chelsea Gant over on my YouTube channel, and kind of what we were talking about was a shift from, so Saturn is things that are chronic, like chronic illness, a shift from this mysterious chronic illnesses that are affecting women to focusing maybe a little bit more on men's health. Definitely fertility, definitely male fertility. Testosterone, that's already a big issue. Like, I think that's going to be a bigger issue. We talked about kind of like new issues arising involving injectables because we have Aries, which is ruled by Mars, which rules like shots, like also vaccines could be a thing too, but like just thinking about how this impacts kind of the collective experience with health. And you think about how many people, especially men, are injecting themselves with like peptides and testosterone and this and that, and how it's sort of the Wild West with these types of things right now. I think we're going to see a lot more around that and potentially maybe even trying to regulate that. But I think in terms of health issues, I think it's going to shift more toward all of a sudden there's this like a crisis of maybe more acute issues because it's in the sign of Aries and acute issues that become chronic. So it's like a thing that comes up and then it becomes chronic. Also, more issues with men's health specifically. I think that's going to be a bigger thing because that's not really been as much of a thing. And the mysterious chronic illnesses are primarily like a woman's issue. Like they affect women more than men. Um, yeah, I think we're going to see that changing. I think it's going to shift.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot, at least in my life, I'm seeing a lot of heart attacks and strokes, blood clots, and yeah, men's fertility being something that, as somebody who has been trying to conceive for a while and has 2 miscarriages and has done a crazy amount of fucking research and focused on her own health and has actually balanced out her hormones. If anybody out there has like really long cycles and is trying to balance their hormones, I've tried everything. What actually worked for me was shatavari. Am I saying that right? Shatavari. It's a Ayurvedic herb. Um, I am going to scream from the rooftops about shot of fucking Vari. It is the most amazing thing. My cycle is now normal, but I have read a lot about the male factor of
Mhm.
things. Like usually when you have a miscarriage, it's like, oh, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Oh,
Yeah.
it's your hormones, or it's this, or it's that. And it's like over 50% of all miscarriages is a male factor. The
Mhm.
man is responsible for building the placenta,
Mhm.
and sperm counts have just completely fucking plummeted. And yeah, it's about time that they look at themselves. Okay, because the fertility rates and the amount of women I know who have been having miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. Of course, yes, we have our own issues that we need to work on, but the men tend to think that they don't, and it's very frustrating. And I hope that we see that shift. Um,
I think we
now,
will because,
yeah,
like, men having low testosterone and, like, sperm motility issues and, like, all this stuff, it's becoming such a big thing, and when I look at charts for fertility, it's always a woman who wants me to look at her chart. You have to look at the man's chart, and you have to look at his Mars, and more than half the time, it's the man's I'm like, "You go get his sperm tested, like, go get his hormones tested." Like, his chart has the problem. It's
mhm.
not necessarily you, and when you both have stuff in your charts, then that's when it really gets a little dicey, but no, you're right, like, it's not just the woman, and it always falls on the woman. Like, you have to do better, you have to do all this stuff, you have to take all the fertility herbs, you have to get all the shots, you have to get all the things, and you need a viable sperm that's like healthy in order to create a healthy baby that can actually make it full term. So, yeah, I hope that awareness of that increases for sure.
100%. And then I also find it interesting that you mentioned injectables because, yeah, testosterone is lowering. And then the men are like, well, I'll just shoot myself up with some testosterone. And then that causes infertility. Like taking synthetic testosterone instead of diet changes and things like that in order to naturally raise your testosterone causes male infertility. And so I hope that they figure some things out.
Right.
Neptune also governs illness, like just illness and disease in general, right? There's also this like crazy rise in cancers. Like, I can't believe how many young people I know who are no longer, like, know in my personal life who are now no longer with us,
Wow.
including my brother's 33-year-old wife. Like, so freaking sad. Um, the day of my brother is a Cancer sun. And the day of the Jupiter-Venus conjunction, that fell on his sun. This is why I no longer say Jupiter is just lucky. Everybody's like, Jupiter is just so much luck. I'm like, yeah, it's good luck and it's bad luck because the day of the Jupiter-Venus conjunction hit his sun, he found out that his wife had a week to a month to live.
What?
And so it was a big Jupiter event around a relationship, Venus, that of course forced him to grow in a Jupiterian way, but growing is very painful. And yeah, she's no longer with us. And I'm seeing so much like rises in like, these very aggressive turbo cancers. And I know like Aries is very like aggressive. It has a lot of energy. And I'm wondering if I'm not versed in medical astrology, so you'll have to tell me. But I'm wondering if Neptune moving into Aries will make some of these like diseases a little bit more aggressive, or is it going to be more like acute, like you had said before?
So, Neptune, as far as I've seen, is not usually implicated in charts that have cancer diagnosis. It's not
Okay.
a big player.
What do you
Nep
normally see with
so
that?
with cancer diagnosis, I don't know if I wanna get into that whole big
You have to.
wormhole there. But what I do see with Neptune, like Neptune rules literally like pathogenic illness. You'll see a lot of especially bacterial infections, fungus and fungal infections that'll
Mhm.
sometimes have a Pluto component, but fungus, mold, like mold illness. You'll see a little bit of viral stuff, but again, that sometimes has to do with Pluto too. But it's especially like wet, like gross, pussy types of infections you'll see, and like fungal infections, candida, mold illness, things like
Mhm.
that. You'll get a lot of those things with Neptune, and also infections that are like chronic and hard to treat and mysterious in origin. So it's kind of like it could potentially be in Aries like those like superbugs, right? Where nothing can touch it and it's an infection and the antibiotics don't work and the herbs don't even work. And it's like, how do we actually treat this? So I could see that becoming more of a thing. I don't know if that has to do with cancer diagnosis though.
Okay. Well, we can only hope that it doesn't get any worse, although the world is poisoning us left and right.
Well,
And I
and
think this is
Neptune does
nothing
rule
new.
poisons, so we can at least go with that.
Oh, Neptune governs poisons.
Yeah.
Oh, toxins and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely that, but people are getting hip to it, like when before, it was just us on the fringes who were like, that's toxic. I'm going for a low tox environment, blah, blah, blah. I'll even see like my mom and her friends and stuff like that being cutting certain things out. And I'm just like, all right, like the normies are starting. She used to be like, "Oh, whatever, Allie, everything's killing me." And I'm just like, yeah, but you're going to kill yourself faster. you know, I'm like, you've already survived cancer. Can we like cut back on some of these things? But now she does it, but it has to be her own decision. And I think that maybe that things moving into Aries, people are going to start to make decisions themselves. You know what I mean? It's going to feel like right for you at this time. Like Aries is so individual, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be like running forward with things that they think was their idea, but people have been telling them to do for a really long time. But didn't feel right until then.
Yeah.
All right, last question, and then we're done. All right, so this
Okay.
Neptune, Neptune Saturn conjunction falls on my north node, like exactly conjunct my north node. It is in a Placidus chart, it's in my 7th house, but in a whole sign chart, which I know you use whole sign, is in my 8th house. It falls opposite my sun, which is on my south node, and square my Neptune. And I'm wondering, you don't have to like focus too much on my chart, but for those of us who have like really strong 0-degree placements, I'm wondering if there's like a general kind of thing that you may want to kind of let us know moving into this. It's very hard for me to read my own chart, especially with like, I'm really good at hindsight, looking at my chart in hindsight and seeing how things happen. But like, whenever I try to look too far in the future for my own personal chart, I either like Neptune is natally square my sun. I either see this like idealized version, rose-colored glasses, or I see like the worst possible outcome, but conjunct my north node. What do you think about that? Give me something. And then maybe for other people who have these strong 0-degree placements.
So
Best I got is it's faded as fuck. That's the best I got. And there's nothing I can really do about it. It's just something I'm gonna have to kind of navigate, overthinking and it isn't gonna do me much good. But I want to hear what you have to say.
and this is opposing your sun?
It's opposing my Libra sun.
You have a
Yeah.
sun south node conjunction. You're an eclipse baby.
I'm an eclipse baby. I'm born right between 2 eclipses. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I'm just trying to think of like how to frame this because it's not all like bad stuff, right? Like it's not all bad stuff. But when you're looking at this this 8th second house axis and you're looking at it like from that perspective, which is how I look at it with the whole sign houses, you're dealing with, first off, a change in financial situation. So it's kind of like a dissolving of an old situation and having to rebuild. I would say that potentially there could be something coming up with the partner's resources or resources in partnership. I know that you're in partnership. So like your partner's resources could be changing or there could be a challenge that comes up that you don't feel prepared to deal with. It's kind of like, oh crap, this is happening. Now I have to actually just scramble and figure it all out. It's probably going to be kind of like a having to come to terms with anything that you haven't taken full responsibility for financially up until this point. So, like cleaning up debts, any bills that you haven't paid that come to collections or come to the forefront. If that's not applicable to you, it could be like having to deal with some sort of expense, having to deal with insurance. Do you have insurance? Like that's something to think about at this time. Get insurance, get life insurance, get, those types of things because that is an 8th house topic too. There could be themes that come up involving death and things like that as well. But a lot of this is mostly going to be very triggering to you psychologically and emotionally because the 8th house is the house of our deep-seated fears, our fears and anxieties that are left over from traumas that have happened throughout our lifetime that we haven't fully integrated and resolved and worked through that will be triggered in the present moment, not necessarily because something's happening, but because we're still holding on to that fear. And even though it's not necessarily relevant to now, it's still there and it's still holding power and control over the situation and the choices that you're making here and now. And so I think it'll bring up a lot of fears around death, fears around financial stuff, but also just anything that you haven't dealt with from your past and from your childhood in terms of trauma is up for review at this time. But in a very like practical, tangible, physical way, like take care of your resources, make sure you have all of your insurance payments done, like make sure that you've paid off all of your bills and that your stuff isn't going to collections. And you might have to help your partner kind of restructure, reconfigure something around his resources as well.
That's where we have been. So Eddie works construction. He builds stairs, but the tariffs are so bad right now that like nobody wants to build because the supplies needed to build the wood, the screws are like so crazy expensive. And usually around the holidays it slows down, but this year from like November to like now, there has been no jobs. at all. And so he was like, all right, I have to go get like a real job that's like a paycheck where I have that. And then I can do this like after work or on the weekends or whatever. And so his first day at work was yesterday. And so thankfully, we very much need this like shift in like joint resources. He also has Jupiter moving into his second. And so I feel like these two things together is going to make us more financially secure than before. Um, but yeah, I have medical insurance, but that's the only kind of insurance. I'm wondering like, so the eighth house also governs like reproduction, right?
Fifth house.
Fifth house is children, but isn't the eighth
And
house like sex and like the dance you need to do to make a baby?
the dance you need to do to make a baby is also in the fifth house. But in modern astrology, sometimes they look at it as the eighth house. In my experience, it doesn't work for reproduction. So you'd
Yeah.
want to be looking for the fifth.
I've got
Um,
a lot of stuff in the fifth right now too. Yeah.
if you so the one thing I would say is if there are concerns about miscarriage, because you've had that happen in the past, that is very literally a death and that is a
Yeah.
trauma.
Oh yeah.
And there could be things that come up that are very triggering around that. It does not mean that you will have another miscarriage. That does not mean that. But it means that you will probably be afraid. And that's
Oh
something
yeah.
you're going to have to work through. And that fear impacts your body and it impacts your reproduction and it impacts your ability to carry a child as well, because that is a stress on your
Yeah.
body. And that would be something that I would also really recommend looking at if you're still trying to conceive.
Yeah. Well, no, I am still trying to conceive and everything's finally balanced out. And I do think it's like soon, like the both times I conceived, I ovulated like cycle day 28 and cycle day 30, which is not optimum. Just even start off like that is not good. Now everything is looking good,
But
so I think
yeah,
it's just a matter of time. But then if it does happen, I will be scared the whole time. Like
yeah,
every little twinge, every little thing, I know I'm going to be. Last time I was like obsessively Googling everything and I know like I just spiked my cortisol. And so I'm going to have to like kind of like work through that fear. And
yeah,
it's going to bring everything up. I mean, I tried to process it as best I can, but I have to also get back to my life and my kids and my work. And so things get repressed in favor of not spiraling
yeah.
into the deepest of deep depressions, even though I was there. Like it was real bad, especially once your hormones flatline. Like it's an awful place to be. And I'm sure that will all be coming up again. But yeah, I always worry with things moving into the eighth. I have a lot of things in the eighth. I got Jupiter in the eighth. Like I I it's my life is crisis after crisis after crisis. All right, Heather. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here with me. I'm so glad you're over here on Substack. Um, yeah, you're not doing Instagram anymore, huh? You're done?
I'm going to be trickling out. I'm figuring out how to exit without just like dropping everything. So I will be leaving Instagram. You can find me on YouTube though. That is my main place. So Astrology with Heather. If anybody wants to learn astrology, I have a whole playlist of a bunch of different tutorials and educational content. I do forecasts at least twice a month. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff on there for everyone. So go find me on YouTube. I'll be posting things here on Substack too. And yeah, thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. And then I always send my clients towards your course. I have a course as well, but yours is just like a full blown academy, every little bit and tying it all together. And I'm just like, yeah, take mine if you want to learn some like asteroids and fixed stars and all of the weird stuff. But if you really want to know the ins and outs, go to Heather. You're the only person who I know who has that like comprehensive academy. It's like going to a university and learning astrology.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. That is a huge compliment. And I would say that our methodologies probably pair well together because you fill in the gaps where I don't really touch a lot of asteroids. I don't do a lot of fixed star things. And you are brilliant at that, especially the fixed stars. We've had a conversation about that before. So, yeah, I'll definitely have to have you on to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll do it
So,
for sure. For sure.
take both of our courses at the same
Yeah.
time. You'll
Take our
learn more that way.
courses. Take our courses. And yeah, her YouTube is amazing. Your YouTube is phenomenal. It's like the best astrology YouTube channel, in my opinion. And I'm very excited that you're over here on Substack because that long form writing is where it's at.
Mhm.
And yeah, thank you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you guys for being here in the chat. And this will be uploaded all of the places. So share with your friends once the recordings are all the places.
Awesome.
All right. Bye.
Bye.